Another really incredible feature of the stitching window that AVP gives you is something called RMS Curves. And what RMS Curves are is basically to check the stitching quality, like it says right here very simply. So once you have your in and out points set up, you can hit the Compute RMS Curve button, and what that will do is it will actually generate curves, and it will visually show you where the stitch is good and where the stitch could be better. So let's go ahead and do that now and see what results we get. All right, now that the RMS curve is done, it plots this curve, like I said before, on your stitch line, that you can sort of see a visual representation of what your stitch looks like. So you can see it kind of starts out pretty poor up near the beginning, obviously because it's, you know, right down in the middle of the crowd here. But you can see that about by this point, our stitch starts to look really good. So now with this information, you can pinpoint certain areas, kind of maybe like this little peak here, where the stitch isn't as good as it could be. So this is a great place to maybe start doing some tweaks, maybe adding a keyframe from there to here or something, and saying I'm going to do a current position stitch at this point. So we did our range stitch to start out with. Now we're using adaptive stitching to get the best possible result that we can through looking at the RMS curves. Okay, so when we have our peaks here, and you'll notice that it went gray because I've made changes and it needs to re-evaluate, recompute basically. I'm just going to choose a small area here for it to compute that RMS curve. And let's say we do from this point, I'll do another current position stitch, sorry. We can drag this blue area to wherever we want, just kind of roughly around the area we want to evaluate and analyze for the RMS curve. And we'll go ahead and do that now. And you'll see that it's going much faster now because it's not doing the entire timeline. Okay, so things are looking pretty good. It's giving us pretty much, this is like the best quality we're going to get. It kind of seems to kind of start out nice and low there, and then it builds up, and then it gets low back down again. And as you can see that it's right around our keyframes. And that's simply because we already did our adaptive stitching at these 2 points. So these 2 points should be as best as they possibly can be, which it shows that it is. It's slightly lower than the rest of these. And these aren't terrible, obviously. The really, really bad stuff, you'll see these huge peaks, right? These big spiny looking things. That means it's pretty much, you know, useless footage. But this here is kind of a nice smooth curve. That's usually a pretty good sign. But if I want to go in and dive in a little bit deeper here, I can say this part kind of looks like it could be a little bit lower. So I'm going to go ahead and hit current position and do a stitch there. And you notice a few little changes around here. Okay, looks a little bit better. And you notice again that our RMS curve went gray. I'm actually going to hit Compute RMS Curve again just to see if we notice any difference from our previous little, it's kind of hard to see the gray grid there, or the gray curves, but we'll see if we notice any difference from what it was before to what it is now after we've done another stitch at this point. All right, so it's all right. I mean, it's still, there's a little bit of a weird spot right there. I'm actually going to zoom in at these points. So you can see these curves are a lot more obvious when we're zoomed in a lot. So I'm actually going to try doing a stitch here. Okay, and that changed it up a little bit. I'm going to fix the horizon a little bit as well. Automatically create a keyframe for us. So I'm now going to zoom back out here by holding the Option key or the Alt key on my keyboard and scrolling with my mouse. And I'm just going to do a really quick analysis in this region because I want to see if I got it any better than what it was, just barely. That'll go by really fast. And you'll see that, interestingly, right at that point it went down, but there's these kind of little wobbles here. So you can see as the camera's sort of wobbling, you can almost visualize that wobble with these RMS curves because that sort of throws off the stitch a little bit. The way you could fix this especially is by doing stabilize and doing it that way. But at this point you get the idea of what an RMS value is, what an RMS curve does and how it can be useful. It helps you visualize where stitching could be better. It gives you a good starting point to know where in the timeline you have problems, and then you can go in and dial in and start trying to fix them. I like to use a mixture of both RMS curves and of course watching it with my own eyes to check for stitch errors. And then from there, once I know where all the problems are at, I can use all the techniques that I've taught you to fix all those stitch issues.